All right, so the following problem says to factor the expression completely, and it gave us this expression right over here. Now, when it comes to factoring, there are certain techniques that we can use just depending on the problem that we're given. Now, taking a look at this one here, the first thing I notice is that we have 4 terms in this problem. And when we have 4 terms in the problem, that applies to a specific factoring technique. That is factor by grouping. Factor by grouping is the only factoring technique that applies when you have 4 terms in the problem. And factor by grouping tells you to do this. You're going to group the first 2 terms and group the back 2 terms. And what you're going to do is you're going to factor out a GCF from each one of these groupings. So taking a look at my first grouping, so let's see, 8 and a 7 do not have anything in common, so we can't factor out anything from that. We have a y here, but we don't have it here, so it's not in common. We can't pull out a y. But they do both have an x. So it looks like our GCF is just an x, because this is an x to the first, this is an x to the first, and when we pull out a variable, we always want to pull out the one with the lowest exponent. So it looks like just x is our GCF here. So we're going to factor it out, which means we're going to divide it out from our grouping. Now, this 8 is going to drop down, this y is going to drop down, and we're left with x over x, which is going to cancel. Plus, the 7 is going to drop down, and we have x over x, which is going to cancel. Now we need to take a look at our second grouping. And in our second grouping, starting with our numbers, 40 and 35, those have a 5 in common. Now we have a y here, but we don't have one here, so that looks like we do not have anything in common with our variables. So it looks like 5 is our GCF. So we're going to factor that out, which means we're going to divide it out. 40 divided by 5 is 8. Drop down the y with it. Plus 35 divided by 5 is 7. Now, when it comes to factor by grouping, you should be left with the same exact thing inside these parentheses. They are both 8y plus 7. If you are not left with the same thing inside the parentheses, then you did something wrong up here. You're supposed to be left with the same thing, which means that I have 2 terms here, and they each have this 8y plus 7 in common. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull out that 8y plus 7, since they both have it in common. And since we're pulling it out, we're factoring it out, we need to divide it out to see what we're left with here. Now, we're going to cancel these, right? Same thing in the numerator as the same thing in the denominator. They're going to cancel. So these are going to cancel, leaving us with this x plus 5. Right, this goes away, this goes away. All we have is the x and the plus 5 left over when you do that. So this is our final answer here after using factor by grouping.